the stream button. He's doing a hard workout. So we've got about 30 seconds to go. All right, and we're rolling. Welcome, everyone. So this is your Monday ODZ Chat and Chill ride. Steady pace, 1.5 to 2 watts per kilogram. Lots of riders here in the pen and also on Discord. So thanks for joining. Yes, afternoon to some people. All right, I'm Taya Freestead, and today we have a special guest. We have Eric Schlange from Zwift Insider, who very graciously agreed to wake up super early, 4 a.m. on his time zone, to join this ride. So we're very excited to have him here. Eric, thanks for
Good morning,
joining.
everyone. Hey, thanks for having me, Taya. I'll get a nice ride in before work even starts today.
Yeah,
It'll be fun.
start the day and the week ready. Um,
Yep.
and uh, And so, for those of you watching us on Facebook, YouTube, Mixer, feel free to type in questions that you might have. And of course, everybody here on Discord, feel free to jump in and join the conversation. So, Eric, you are probably one of the most well known people in Zwift because, well, you are the person behind Zwift Insider. And I must say, from when I started in Zwift, back in 2015 to today, I go to Zwift Insider all the time. It's got amazing content. I am sure everybody on this ride is familiar with the website. If you're not, you're missing out. So, but I'm even more excited to have you here because even though I've been reading your website for so long, I never really got to talk to you. So this is a great opportunity. So why don't we start. I'll give a brief background. So Eric runs Zwift Insider in his spare time when he isn't on the bike or managing his other business interests. He lives in North California with his wife Monica, who I've ridden before, and I interact with Monica quite a bit on the Ladies Zwift Facebook page. And you have 2 kids and a dog. But Eric, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Tell about
You
myself.
yeah,
I well, apparently I just had an internet dropout, so hopefully you can still hear me.
we can.
Okay. I was riding alone for a few seconds, but here I am back. Uh, about me, let's see. I am 38 years old. I I come from I'd classify myself as a lover of cycling, but I'm not an amazing cyclist by any stretch. I will not be joining the pro ranks anytime soon, nor have I ever been a member of said ranks. I was a keen cyclist. I was very into cycling when I was in high school. There wasn't a lot of cycling going on in this area. It's kind of a small town area that I'm in here, and just had a few friends, and we rode a lot. And I followed cycling and was super into everything, especially road riding, but some mountain biking. And then after high school, I basically set it aside for 18 years. So when I turned 18, I walked away from cycling for 18 years and went to college, got married, had 2 kids, started businesses, because I knew that I liked cycling so much that I didn't have time to get back into it. And then a few of my close local friends started riding again seriously at my prodding. I told them they would really enjoy it, guys who'd never really ridden before. And eventually I thought, you know what, I'm going to get back into it if my buddies are doing it. So that was a little over 3 years ago that I started road riding again in earnest. I'd been dabbling in it before that, mountain biking on the weekends and stuff. But, so as a road rider, a serious road rider, I'd say I don't know, I'm either 3 years old or 21 years old, something like that. When it comes to Zwift, I joined Zwift about a month before it went to a paid plan. Things were starting to get cold here in Northern California. That would have been in, when was that, 2015, maybe October of 2015. And I signed up, thought it was amazing. They came out of beta, and I still thought it was amazing. And I just dove in. It was maybe 2 months after signing up to Zwift that I started the Zwift blog website. I think it's just kind of my personality that I really get into stuff. It's kind of an all or nothing thing for me. And Zwift was fascinating to me, the fact that I could compete with other cyclists around the world. This amazing community. You can get support from other people and just everything that came with it. I knew it was very important what was going on. And I also knew that I could help that community, because there was a real need for information. We can talk more about that later, but that was kind of the genesis of that. Business-wise, everyone asks me.
So if there's so much on the website, if you do that on your spare time, tell us about your day job.
Yeah. So I started when I was in college, and it actually started at the end of my high school life. I started building websites as a job, was working for myself. I've always been kind of entrepreneurial. I think I get it from my mother's side. When I see opportunities to make money doing something that I enjoy, that's intriguing to me. And I've always loved the tech side of stuff, kind of a self-taught computer guy. So I started building websites, One day, someone told me, they said, Eric, so you have your own business doing websites, right? And I thought, do I have my own business? That hadn't even crossed my mind.
I
I didn't know what
guess.
that meant. And then I thought, well,
Right.
I guess I do. That's what that means. People pay me to do things. Uh, so I still have that business that I started back in 1997. And that business is called Bit Sculptor because we sculpt bits, and we build websites. I don't spend much. That doesn't take much of my daily time anymore. I have a guy who basically runs it, and I'm the owner. But that's kind of what everything is sprung out of for me is building websites. Uh, I Nowadays my time is spent. I basically split my time between three things when it comes to work. In the mornings, my time is split between Zwift Insider stuff and uh, a business called Hangout Network, which we can talk more about. But that's basically a social network for musicians. So my mornings are Zwift Insider and Hangout Network, and then in the afternoons, well, so those two businesses are mine. I own them, run them, manage them. In the afternoons, I'm the I think my job title technically is vice president of a local company called Apricot Power. It's owned by a buddy of mine that I've known for a long time, and they're a nutritional supplement business, online business that sells things related to apricot seeds, essentially. Due to the joy of our lovely FDA, I can't tell you why people buy apricot seeds, but I can tell you they buy a lot of them uh,
Interesting.
for very good reason. So Google that if you're ever curious. But Apricot
I'm
Power is
I'm
that
very
business. And
curious because I eat a lot of apricots. Interesting. Okay.
yeah, well, we can talk. But yeah, that's all those businesses. What I love about them is I'm uh, I'm very passionate about what they're doing. It's not just a job for me. I remember when I was young, my dad telling me he was a he was actually a pastor, a church pastor for most of my life, and he told me, Eric, you need to find a job doing something that you enjoy, and if you do that, then you'll never work a day in your life. You never feel like you're working. That stuck with me from when I was young, and I always thought, okay, I gotta figure out what I enjoy, and then figure out how to make a living doing it. So I'm pretty happy where I'm at.
That's
Sometimes I feel
fantastic, Eric.
a little bit overly busy, but
Yeah, I'm
it's still
sure
fun.
because there's so much going on, right? And being
There
able
is.
to manage your time so that you're spending the time that you need in each one. Um, I find that I love the story because I had the opposite start in my career where, growing up in a modest family in Brazil, I had to, I wanted to do certain things, but I knew I was not going to make any money doing them. So I had to go into a traditional field and became a lawyer and worked as a lawyer for over 20 years. And so, and finally I went out to pursue what I really love doing. And here I am today. But it's great to hear that you started already that way. And I find being an entrepreneur myself now that I am so used to the structured environment of working in a corporate environment that I have a hard time managing all these time demands, that all these things that pop up. And I think, especially in your case, Zwift Insider, I mean, there's so much that comes up in the world of Zwift all the time. And how do you keep on top of everything? Do you have, I think you have contributors now, right, to the site?
I do, yeah. I've actually had. I mean, I've had a small number of contributors for over a year now. site's been around for 2 years and a couple months. It was December of 15 that it started, but back in October of 17, so maybe 4 months ago, I put out the call for contributors because I was realizing I was kind of hitting my limit with Zwift Insider, where it was all me. I mean, it was 90% me doing the posts, and there's only so much that I can communicate from my angle before it gets pretty boring, I think. So, and of course, there's the time side of it too. So, I put out the call, and I had what I was looking for was people to commit to write one post a month at least if they wanted to be on the Zwift Insider team. And I got about 35 people who said they would do that, which I was amazed by. It's actually kind of worked out to be more like maybe 15. But that's fine. I knew that would happen. And that's a good number. It's a more manageable number. So yeah, now now I'm not writing the majority of the content. Someone else is, and I'm just kind of the editor. I proofread each post. I kind of massage it, make it look good, and I schedule when each post is going to go live to kind of keep a flow that makes sense and not barrage people with it.
Sure.
So yeah, I do have a team, and it's a very good thing. I really like having different points of view. Like one of the guys, Jordan Sheen, who rides he's a pro rider with KHS and using Zwift for training. I mean, there's an angle that I would never have. Super interesting angle, and he's an excellent rider. I've got nutritionists on board, coaches, and then people like with beginners, riders who are even more newbies than I am. Kind of the whole gamut.
Sure. And so, still in the topic of the website. So, the name was Zwift Blog. So it's about, let's say, the site is about 2 years old, I guess, and it was initially built as a repository of Zwift-related news and information. And now it has grown a lot, and you have then your contributors that we were just talking about, and you have some partnerships too with other um, sites and teams that are in Zwift. So Zwiftcast is an example, Zwift Community Live, Team ODZ, and you are actually a member of Team ODZ, and then Shane Miller, aka Llama, was here in Chat and Chill a couple weeks ago, which is fantastic because then you have all of even more of the relevant content on the website. And so, on the evolution of the website, can you tell us how it was at the beginning and how it evolved and what it is today?
Yeah, I would say at the beginning, to summarize why I started the site, it was because all of the good information about Zwift lived in the Zwift Riders Facebook group, which was silly to me, because when you search for a question about Zwift on Google, it will not search the Zwift Riders Facebook group. So
right.
People.
Or can I just say, can I interrupt you and say, even when you search the actual Zwift Riders Facebook page, you don't get exactly good results. It's just not, Facebook is just not the platform for repository of information and share of information, I don't think.
It is not. And 2 years ago, it was even less. So, I thought instead of seeing the same question asked and answered over and over again on riders, I would try to answer some of those questions. And I was asking some of the same questions myself and figuring out the answers, learning a lot. And I thought, I work through questions and answers best in writing. I prefer to write because I like to write it all out, go back there, revise it, figure out how to answer something in the most concise and straightforward way. So I thought, I think that's in my skill set. I think I could contribute to the community that way. So it really just started as a kind of a personal blog where I started answering questions. Then it became popular because people were finding it useful. We would reference it a lot in the Zwift Riders Facebook group, and it just kept on growing and growing. And I kept having more and more ideas. I had a long list of, I could do this and this, and I could create a map. There wasn't a map in the game, and I could do speed tests and all this stuff. So it's just kind of grown right along with Zwift in terms of traffic, in terms of content. I think we've got something like 650 posts on the site now.
Wow.
Lots and lots of stuff. But yeah.
And it is a much better search engine. It's easy to find things there.
Yeah. You can search the site, and it shows up on Google when you type just about any question. So
right.
So that's all good.
Yeah, for sure.
I should mention part of the genesis of, I think, of creating the site is I love online communities. I think there's a lot of power in those, and I'm very comfortable working with them. And that's mostly because of the site I mentioned, the Hangout Network, that I started back in, I think it was 2001. I started a website for banjo players when I was still in college. I'm a musician, not a great one, but I do play music. And I started this website for banjo players, again, just kind of on a whim, just as a way to centralize some information that I thought would be helpful to others. But it's become basically the internet's top social network for banjo players. And it's so I've been managing forums and this online community of 90,000 kickers and grinners for 15 years, and seeing the ins and outs of what do you do when you have a troll, and how do you get questions answered so people can find them again later, and seeing all the power in that, meeting people in real life who you've affected through your site. Mm-hmm. There's lots of cool stuff like that. It's very inspirational to me to see the internet, to see technology work to bring people together to accomplish something big, something important. That's a cool thing for me.
And no doubt, a lot of the experience you've had or still have with that website, that all that knowledge that you built and that you transfer over to Zwift Insider and the other things that you do. I have a question for you on that other website. So, do you have a forum on that one?
Yes.
So and I have a forum too for the Endurance Lab, which is the coaching services that we offer with other coaches from Team ODZ. And we find that a forum is just an outstanding way, clean, to keep the information searchable and relevant, and people, you don't get distracted by all this other stuff that goes on in social media. Have you ever thought about doing a forum for Zwift Insider?
Yes, I have. When I first started the site, there was actually a couple of Zwift forums that spun up around the same time, and I thought, well, I'm not going to start another competing one. Both of them were actually pretty well done, and my site wasn't really anything special at the time. I had started maybe a month before them, so so I stayed away from it. But neither of those are even live anymore. They came and went. So I've toyed with the idea, but there's already, I think it's so entrenched in Facebook, it would be really tough to have a forum that would take off with a high enough level of activity that it would really be what I would deem a success. I could be wrong, but basically it's an investment that I'm not convinced would pay off, and that's why I stayed away from it, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's
Between
tough to
Zwift's own
manage.
forums and Facebook, it's kind of, yeah, that's the other side of it. Is I know that I would need to get some volunteer moderators to help.
Right.
I don't want to manage another forum,
Yeah.
but I do think that the Facebook side of it is pretty thick. It's all quite entrenched between there and Zwift's own forums. I don't know if we need a third one or not,
Right.
but I vacillate, to be honest. I'm not convinced one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, I think you would have to separate the social aspect of it from the technical aspect of it. So I think a forum would be more along the lines of questions on setups, issues, etc., versus pictures of look at me with the jersey, the KON jersey. I think it would have to have a completely different purpose, and that's where again moderating becomes tough, especially because Zwift Riders has how many members? Over
like 45,000 or something now.
Yeah, that's insane. Anyway, but thanks for your thoughts on that.
Sure.
And so then in talking about the evolution of Zwift Insider, the name change from Zwift Blog to Zwift Insider came about as, again, the website is got a broader perspective than just a blog, right? And at the same time, there has been a recent partnership with Zwift headquarters. So tell us a little bit more about that partnership.
Sure. So back when before the winter season started for this year, and I was looking at Zwift Insider and Zwift Blog at the time, and thinking, what do I want to accomplish with this in the near term? I was torn because I knew that to take it to the next level, I needed something more than just myself. So I reached out to Zwift HQ, reached out to Eric Min first, actually. We've always had a good relationship, just via Facebook Messenger and email. Basically, he's a cool and helpful guy. So I reached out to him and said, "Here's where I'm at. What are your thoughts?" And he pointed me to Emily Mullen, who was kind of a newer hire at the time, kind of a brand manager at Zwift, and said, "Let's work with Emily, see what we can figure out to help give you advice and help support what you guys are doing, because we really like Zwift Blog. We want to see it thrive and stay around," which is a smart move on their part. So in talking to Emily, we came up with a few things. One was to go after getting more contributors. That was part of my discussion with her, and the advice that she offered to me as well. And that was an outgrowth of that. It's just growing the team. But she also said we meaning Zwift HQ, would love to kind of give you more more inside information, advance notice about what's coming up in game, and things like that, and possibly even some kind of support, monetary support. But she said what we would ask of you to do that is to change the name to something other than Zwift as there's been issues with confusion with that since day one. Basically, Zwift wasn't always great about thinking about their intellectual property or their branding. There's a lot of good Zwift names that were never really registered, and they have their own blog. So obviously, a site called Zwift blog is a little confusing. I get questions that really should be directed at Zwift HQ all the time. So she asked what I thought about that, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea. I liked the idea of creating a more distinct brand with a more distinct name. I liked taking the blog part out of it because it's really not just a blog at this point.
Right.
And they offered some money for the domain. Certainly not a huge sum that I'll be retiring on soon, but I'd say a fair amount. So we worked out a deal where I still haven't given them the rights. We're still working on turning that over in a way that still keeps my old URLs redirected and stuff. But they have paid for it. And another part of that deal is that they agreed to a year of monthly sponsorship of the site just to help cover costs like my email list service that's $150 a month and things like that. So that's cool. I mean, it's not going to break their bank by any stretch, but it's a way for them to say that they support what we're doing, and they have said, we want to see you. We want to see you find other ways for the site to make enough income to where you can invest a lot of time into it, continue to grow it, which is my goal. I think for any website to be viable, you have to make it an income source. Sure. Some people don't like to think about things that way. They think you can survive on unicorns and fluffy clouds, but after building hundreds of websites and seeing businesses start and fail for all my life, I know that a long-term viable website, especially one that's very content-driven, where you have to create new content regularly, there has to be a viable income source for it to remain successful. So I am looking at other ways besides Zwift to fund it, with sponsors and things like that, and that's an interesting challenge in itself. But I'm fine with that. It's just it's another part of the business.
Yeah. I think it's surprising to a lot of people who are not familiar with running a website how expensive it can get. It's yeah. It really is, and I'm again a good example of that. When I started my Volume Fit website, and now the Endurance Lab website, and everything that goes with it, and then selling things to the website. I mean, it's a lot. It adds up. It's not just all the software and all the plugins. It's I mean, the list is endless. It's sending emails and connection and everything.
And if you're paying someone to build the site, which I'm not, I'm doing it myself, but if you're paying someone, that's super expensive.
Right.
And then for me, the biggest cost is my time. I learned, I think a big difference between my perspective on my time when I was in college and my perspective now is that my time is worth a lot more. I know that I can. Well, and you were a lawyer, so I'm sure you could see it from the same perspective, that you know that you could go and work and bill yourself out and say, my every hour of my time is worth whatever, $100, $50, whatever value you put on it. But I know that I could invest my time elsewhere and make X amount. And with
Right.
Zwift Insider, I'm spending, I would say, 1 to 2 hours per weekday. So probably 6 to 10 hours a week on the site, and that I'm not going to do that for free. Uh, it's I love it, but I know that for it to be successful long term, there has to be more in there than just me enjoying Zwift. And I want to build a site that's going to be around a long time. I don't want to invest myself in something that's going to fold next year.
Yeah.
So I want to create something quality and long term, and the way to do that is to make some money at it. I'm not looking with Zwift Insider. I'm not a. It's a passion project for me where I just love being a part of it all. So it's not something where I see it as a huge profit potential, a big money maker. But I do want it to be something that at least makes sense when I look at it and think I'm not totally wasting my time and wasting my taking away my children's college savings so I can write
Right.
about a bunch of virtual cyclists and runners.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah, and from the outside, that's what it looks like. That's where it's going. Um, when we see the evolution of it, and going back to the insider part, does that mean so? You get some inside information. Are you under a
Yeah.
non-disclosure agreement with Zwift on the information that they provide you?
I'm not yet. They haven't actually given me an NDA, but they said they would. That was part of. I have a signed contract with them, which was really more about the domain name. But but they haven't actually given me an NDA. I assume it's just because they forgot to at this point. But there's an understanding. Basically, we uh, we chat regularly, and they'll just say this is this information is embargoed until
Hmm.
this date. Or, don't share
Right.
this, but here's some info. So I know it's pretty clear what I can share and what I can't, and I'm fine with that. I'm not gonna push those limits.
Yeah. Yeah, but it brings a good level of credibility to the site, because people know you're getting it from the source,
Yeah, it does.
and it's yeah, and it's reliable information. And so I'm assuming then on, let's say, the daily affairs of the site, do you get much involvement from Zwift at all? Do you get any comments on things that you publish that are not? And I know that you put on the website that um, this is all done in a way that preserves the independence in terms of opinions and certain views, right? That you post.
Yeah.
But have you gotten any type of feedback? Let's say I know that you had a post about Virtugo. Do you get any kind of feedback on those kinds of posts from Zwift?
Uh, Not much at all. No. There's been I can count on one hand the number of times that Zwift HQ has reached out to me and asked me to maybe to modify a post, um, and that's never been oh, you wrote something negative about Zwift or you wrote about a competitor and we want to take it down. It's always been like your information's incorrect here, or there was a time or two where I wrote something that they wanted to keep hidden, and they asked me to not publish it for a week or two, usually because it's like they've got a deal with a sponsor or something, and there's a certain timeline associated with it, and so I just respected that. I've always wanted to stay stay positive about Zwift, and stay on their good side, keep the relationship good. But no, they don't have much input or editorial input at all. It's mostly me. I mostly have to reach out to them and ask for information here and there, and then they share regularly with me about what's coming up in the near term.
Right. Awesome. And so you talked about the goal of the website as a business. How about the evolution of the website in terms of content? Where do you see that it could go? And quite frankly, I think it's great the way it is now. I haven't thought about a vision for it because, well, it's not what I focus on. But as you think of it in terms of a vision for what's there, what do you see?
I don't see a lot of missing parts. Um, I I think most of what I want the site to be is already in the place or in place or in the works. Um, there's always more content to be created around Zwift when it comes to events, when it comes to game updates. Every game update results in more questions about features and new bugs and new things you can hack. So I don't see it changing a lot in terms of the focus of the content. I've thought about when we would change the name to Zwift Insider. I mulled over the idea of not even having Zwift be in the name and having it be more of an indoor cycling sort of a website, because there are competitors out there.
Right.
But I don't really like any of the competitors at this point, honestly. I've tried them, and I didn't want to put the time in to have to start becoming an expert on Vertigo and everything else.
Right.
So I consciously chose, you know what, it's going to remain the top destination for Zwift. I think focus is a good thing. So content-wise, yeah, I would say you're not going to see a big change in focus, but just more content that Zwifters will care about. There will definitely be more running content moving forward. Another thing that I've started to roll out a little bit on the site is the store side of it. Trying to sell. Right now, all it is posters, but I sell some like the map posters that I created, and then I rolled out a few months ago some different, I don't know, I just call them pain cave posters, designs for cool posters that you could hang in your garage that have to do with,
I love the suffer one. Suffer.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool one. I'm looking at it right now, actually, on my wall. So I see that just as another little income stream, and something that is kind of missing. There's not a lot of great sources for indoor cycling posters, so I've got a couple more designs that I'm going to be rolling out soon, and maybe eventually I'll do Zwift Insider T-shirts or who knows what. Again, that's never going to be a huge moneymaker, but I think the way to make a site like this a success is to find small income streams that aren't obtrusive to people, don't bug folks, that actually provide some value to them, and just let those kind of add up to where it's a viable thing that's making you enough money that you can invest a lot of time into it and continue to keep the site successful and growing.
Sure. And it all takes time.
It does, yeah. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
Iterative changes, small changes, and ideas here and there.
Yep. So Eric, let's move on to some funny things that, or some interesting things that more content related. So if I may ask you a few questions about those.
Yes.
What has been the most popular post ever on the site?
There's a, I'll answer it in two ways because there's kind of two categories of popular posts. One, the first one isn't as interesting to me for this discussion, and that is, I would say the most popular post is the post about route information. It's this gigantic page that has summaries and maps of every route that you can ride in Zwift, um, and it was hugely popular, especially back before Zwift had gotten any of that stuff in game. It took them a long time to finally get a map in game and summaries of what each route actually was. Now we kind of take it for granted, but it used to be that you just had this list of Watopia Hilly, Watopia Flat, and you had no idea really what those routes were. So I have that page, and that's always been a very popular reference for folks. Also, the jerseys, the kits page with all the unlock codes is super popular. But the other category that I think is more interesting is, like a post from a person telling a story that gets a lot of response. In that category, the most popular post is actually from my wife, and it was the story she told of climbing up the Epic KOM in a group ride that was centered around her and getting her up the mountain for the first time ever. But she told this really inspiring story. She battled depression for years, and cycling has been a big part of helping her out of that. And it's just a great story that got a lot of response from folks. A lot of folks who were in the same boat, who were intimidated by going up the mountain, who battled depression. Yeah, it was very cool to see that, and very gratifying for her.
I read that one, and it's literally and figuratively, right? Going up the mountain. So yeah, it's a great one. And how about the one post that you remember that has been the one that you got the most feedback? Maybe negative feedback or criticized or disagreements.
Yeah, I haven't really had, honestly, I've had very little negative feedback on any post, but I would say the ones that get the most folks who respond maybe with different points of view and maybe don't agree with portions of it would be any post that has to do with comparing racing indoors to outdoors, or even talking about fairness in Zwift racing. One post that comes to mind actually was a recent one. I only wrote it a few weeks ago, maybe, comparing. I had done my first crit race, outdoor crit race of the season over in Sacramento, and I wrote a post the next day about the comparison between an outdoor crit race and a Zwift race. And I think the biggest point of contention that people had with it was I said that outdoor races, that Zwift races start a lot harder than outdoor races do. And I had a lot of folks that said, no, that's not the case. That outdoor races, you come out guns blazing. And I found that really interesting, actually, because I've never seen that in the races that I've watched and the races I've been a part of. I've never been in a single race that has started as hard as a Zwift race does. Now I know that like longer road races, there will be attacks for the first hour to establish a break, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But that's different than the Zwift start where you're pinned for a minute or two at the start at 450 watts. And that's what I was talking about. I've never been part of an outdoor race.
Yeah, hoping to be able to clear the lactate and keep going right from the beginning.
and
Yeah.
wanting to hang with that front pack. A lot of folks said, well, it's, mountain biking and cross are, they have hard starts like that. And I said, yeah, well, I agree with that, but I wasn't talking about those sports. I was talking about road racing. But that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm willing to learn and willing to admit if I'm incorrect, because I'm certainly not what I would call a seasoned outdoor racer. I'm a USA Cat 4, nothing special, but I have done my share of races, so that's just not been my experience.
Sure. So I have a question here from Chris. He's on the ride with us. He's curious to know the post that you personally was most excited to publish.
Most excited one to publish. I would say that would be the speed test that I did. How long ago was that now? That was probably almost 2 years ago now, I think, when I started doing the tests, where there was this question that popped up regularly. People said, does the frame you choose change your speed in game? And there was all this misinformation about it, and the wheels,
Oh,
all
yeah.
this stuff. So I
Yeah.
figured out a way to automate testing those. I first did them. I did the test manually. I rode different equipment and realized that was going to be a very long project if I was going to do it with my own legs. So I figured out a way to automate it with a bot. And
Well, yeah, because not to mention the consistency too. How are you going to be
yeah,
exactly consistent throughout doing each one of them? Yeah.
I was doing them in erg mode, so it was pretty close, but it was still, just way too much work. So I did, all the different routes, all the different versions of the bikes and frames, and recorded the times to figure out what the fastest combinations were, and with certain bikes faster on climbs and all that stuff. And when I started releasing that information, people were super stoked on it and
Yeah.
found it just to be fascinating how weight affects it and how height affects it. And I found it fascinating too. That's actually where I really learned a lot about outdoor riding, about CDA and the physics of it. I had never put in a lot of time to understand it. Of course, we all know that a more aero position is good and all that, but really learning the specifics was interesting to me.
I've seen that post and I've used it, um, especially before I went to Paris to race in CVR. I
Yeah,
wanted to know which bike to use and everything. So yeah, that was fascinating. I
yeah, you
agree
want
with
every
you.
advantage you can when it comes to races, for sure.
Yeah. Shaved head. Um, so Eric, how about in terms of content that people look for the most? And I guess that's different than the other question that I asked, which was the most popular. But the type of content that people seem to like, is it the routes? Is it something else?
Oh, let's see. Yeah, I'd say it's stuff I've already mentioned. There's they don't look for the routes as much anymore. Um, Definitely the kit unlocks. Everyone wants to know, wow, there's all these kits in game. How do you get them? Um, Leveling information. What uh what what does it take to reach each level, and what do you unlock at each level? Uh, and yeah, the questions of different bikes and how fast they are. A lot of folks are curious about that. But I found there's not one glaring thing that everyone's searching for. There's just tons of small things. It's a big
Okay.
community and people have different focuses. So they want to
Yeah.
know how workouts work. They want to know about kits. They want to know about racing tips. Um, they want to know what this thing on the screen means. There's just lots of small questions. So I try to answer. I try to have posts that focus on those questions and get them answered.
And of course, the purpose is to have the questions that people ask the most as a post as available on the website. Do you still get contacted by people? Do people still reach out to you directly though? Let's say via Facebook, and do you have all? I can picture all these instant messages popping up on your screen. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? Do you get a lot of that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I get a lot of it, but I probably get a question or two a day that's personally directed at me, usually through Facebook Messenger. Well, they post it on the Zwift Insider page, and I try to not spend too much time on those questions, honestly, because it's not my job. So if it's something where I think there's an easy answer, I'll quickly answer it or send them a link. But if it's anything beyond that, I'll point them to Zwift support. I'll say, hey, I'm just a fan, which usually they don't understand. They usually think I'm Zwift. And that's why they're
Tech
asking the
support.
question. So,
Tech
yeah,
support. How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I
exactly.
connect my connection isn't working. My cadence sensor is not working.
Yeah, just over this weekend, I had two questions in the last day or two. One was, how do I view my PRs on Zwift? Which is a good question. I hadn't thought about that, but you can't. There's no way to just pull up your list of best times, unless you're in the game and you're on that particular route, and it shows you what you've done the last 30 days. Mm-hmm. So that was that question, and then another lady who was suddenly experiencing ant dropouts, which is a popular problem, and she was asking how to fix that. And so yeah, but usually I just point them to Zwift support, which they don't realize even exists. So I send them a quick link and send them on their way.
Yeah. So how about some funny questions? Do you remember any questions that you just thought they were just plain funny that you?
The one that still gets me the most is the my Garmin doesn't match my Zwift speed question. That to me is the barometer for someone who just absolutely doesn't understand what's going on in Zwift.
Right.
Other funny questions. I had one question from someone who they asked, how did they couch it? They said, they were confused because they said, every time I ride, there's this person who wants to ride with me, and they ride in front of me the whole ride, and I can never get around them, and I'm not even sure what their name is because the names change so fast. It sounded like they were on a small screen or something, and I'm going, what is going on? And you probably guessed the answer is they were looking at their own avatar on the screen, didn't realize it was them, and they thought they had this stalker in game. No, that's you. That's you. Yeah,
oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm sure. That's awesome. All right. Does anybody else have any questions for Eric? I mean, this has been great, Eric. So informative. And
no, but I would like to thank Eric for the terrific service he provides. Much appreciated.
Hey, thanks. It's my pleasure. In one sense, it's almost like something I can't not do. I'm such a fan of Zwift, and I do it so much myself. It's like I need an outlet anyway. So I enjoy it a lot as well, and I'm glad that I can help others.
Yeah, I would say, there's not a lot in terms of what Zwift puts out themselves for. I mean, there's a lot of good information about setups, etc., on their website. But really, I think the meat of questions that people have and all the information is really by the community. It's by Zwift Insider, is Shane Miller, it's DC Raymaker, is the teams. So much of that comes from the community.
I was in New York City for the run launch last week, and I got to sit down for dinner with a bunch of the Zwift team that was there. There was probably, I don't know, 15 Zwift staffers there, and it was so funny to. at least 2 or 3 of them who told me that when they were hired onto Zwift, the person who hired them sent them an email with essentially a ton of links to Zwift Insider articles, and that was their training material to learn the details of how Zwift worked, so they could work Zwift support. And they said, "Yeah, your sites taught me that it laid the foundation for me to be able to really understand what was going on."
I can see that. That's very interesting. Wow, that's great. Um, that I guess also probably gives you that sense of, hey, I'm doing something cool here. Not that you
Yeah, it
don't know,
definitely
but
does.
it's yeah.
Well, and even when I created the map posters, Zwift HQ asked me to send them a bunch, and they put them up in their offices. And when I went and visited, there's posters hanging. I thought that's super cool that I could be a part of that.
Sure.
Speaking of which, I need to
Awesome.
revise those posters. I have new versions of the maps that I need to finish.
On your spare time.
Yeah, in my spare time.
All right, so we're just coming to the end here of the ride. Thank you again so much for joining, Eric, and we'll see you around Zwift.
Thanks,
Thanks
Thea.
all for
Thanks for
joining.
taking the time. It was a fun ride.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Cheers all.
Cheers.